We're live from Capitol Hill. It's Thursday, the 13th of February, year of our Lord 2020. War Room Pandemic, Episode 16, the most important story in the world. And when we started this several weeks ago, and we started talking about it in early January, around mid-January, really got ramped up around Lunar New Year's, Chinese New Year's. People say, how can you call this a pandemic? It's not a pandemic. You know, it's a cold. Somebody's got a cold in central China. Well, when China sneezes, the rest of the world catches the flu. That's the reality. As President Xi says, the virus is a demon, and we cannot allow this demon to hide. And it's not hiding anymore. In central China, in Hubei province, in Wuhan, a city of 14 million people, the size of New York, they're going door to door on a quarantine. Never seen. The scale of this is never seen before in human history. 100 million people under quarantine, another 300 or 400 million people in virtual lockdown. Now the maxes in southern China, some of them starting to open again. We don't know if there's 10% of the people showing up, 50% of the people. Got Jack Maxey, who runs the War Room Pandemic for us day to day. Now we got a couple of announcements we'll be making tomorrow about new people. But also now honored to be joined by Dave Ramaswamy, a principal at the Indus Latin Ventures Group. He's a specialist in agriculture who'll be talking to us about solutions and potential solutions. Yesterday, everybody's head blew up. We had Rosemary Gibson on, Mike Bowen. Rosemary Gibson's the author of China RX, Exposing the Risks of America's Dependence on China for Medicine, realizing we don't make any of our medicines here. People went through meltdown. The episode had a massive following. Also, Mike Bowen, who makes the N95 mask. We now have an N95 mask here from Mike Bowen, actually from the 3M plant in China that we were somehow able to get. Also honored now to be joined by Dr. Sashun Lin, formerly of the U.S. Army Medical Research Group. He's one of the virus hunters. He's like Dr. Gabriel Leung, our hero from Hong Kong University. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we're on John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Radio, broadcasting nationwide in America's Voice, the platform for the Trump movement throughout the country, the streaming platform. So thank you for our distribution partners, also on all podcasts everywhere. Okay, we're going to start the show with the scale of this. We've been dead right on this now for over a month. In the rest of the world, the smart people know this. But the mainstream media, the corporatists, the globalists, they don't want to admit that there's a massive problem. However it started, it started. There'll be plenty of time, and we're going to have Senator Tom Cotton on the show tomorrow for the first 30 minutes. Senator Tom Cotton will be here to talk about his ideas. He's been out front about how the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, it's their responsibility to walk people through exactly what the beginning of this was. But that, to me, is a hugely important issue. But the biggest issue, Jack and Dave and Dr. Lin, is what is the scale of this in China, because people still don't have their hands around it. Wall Street and all this happy talk that came out of Wall Street for the last couple of days, oh, the numbers are declining, this is not a problem, because the CCP is putting out these nonsense numbers that are bald-faced lies, and people know they're lies. And now the World Health Organization, which I think is also kind of a quasi-debacle, right, has now been forced. It's shows like this, it's people like Dr. Lin, it's other people out there. This great hero, Dr. Gabriel Leung from Hong Kong University, who actually went to London, gave this amazing interview with The Guardian, then went to WHO headquarters and gave a lecture, and now you're seeing a change. And we had 15,000. They upped it yesterday, 15,000.
15,000 overnight.
So, Jack, walk people through the math, how this actually works, the mechanics of how they're counting now.
Okay, now, as we've said all along, the people that we're seeing in
don't
this
be afraid.
list,
Don't be afraid of these microphones.
the people who we're seeing in the
microphone's your friend.
are tested and in the hospital. So I think that Ferguson had...
What was it before?
Yesterday it was 45,000.
No, but what was the difference in the technique the other day and today is what?
The prior criteria was hospitalized, tested positive. The new criteria now, and it's largely because they don't have the tests to keep up with the vast number of people who are sick. We're also finding out that probably 80% of the people don't get sick enough to go to the hospital.
Asymptomatic.
So there's all we're seeing in the official numbers would be the very tippy top of a pyramid of infection inside China. And one of the things that they're doing now, because of the lack of the test kits, is that they're using CAT scans, and they're defining people using clinical observation and saying that they are sick. And the CAT scans will show in the bottom of your lungs where this virus tends to latch what they are calling a ground glass effect.
Let's remember, Dr. Fauci told us at the White House 2 Fridays ago that he said the test kits are even 50-50.
Yes.
Right? Dr. Fauci said the test kits themselves are 50-50. So everything we have here, and this is why we have the show, this is why every day we push these stories out, is because there's a biological Chernobyl that's happened in Wuhan. It's not just the Chinese Communist Party lies about everything. We know that, whether it's the Paris Accord or the trade deal or Hong Kong deal, or they lie about everything because they're a collection of gangsters. But most importantly, if you ever saw the miniseries Chernobyl, they themselves don't really have a grip. And that's where they're firing guys. And that's where they're sending Vice Premier Sun, who's like Khrushchev going to Stalingrad during the battle and saying, hey, guys, we're not backing up an inch here, right? She's the hammer. What she say? Patriots open the door and have your temperatures taken. Mm-hmm. Traitors don't, and traitors are going to be dealt with, whatever that means. So, Dr. Lin, you've got tremendous expertise in this area. You're one of the virus hunters. Talk to us about where do we stand in Wuhan? Because until Wuhan gets sorted, the rest of this is all, we're chasing rabbits.
Yes, the situation in Wuhan is much worse, definitely, than the public knows. And the Chinese government, because they concealed the information as early as in December, and very clear now, even the Wuhan party secretary now, actually, against party rule, they tell the public they already reported to the Central Committee they had a SARS in December. But now, this whole outbreak is already go out of the control. And because they covered up in December and early January, before the Chinese people's, going back to hometown for Chinese New Year.
For Golden Week and Chinese New Year.
Yeah, Golden Week with hundreds of millions of people on the road. So they should
The
stop
biggest
it.
migration in human history happens every year when people in China go home.
Yeah, in the New Year period, in New Year celebration period. So that's why the whole disease out of control, and the outbreak out of control, because more than 5 million people already left Wuhan before the Wuhan city shut down the transportations. So, and they already know it's clearly a cover-up by the central government's decision. So now even local government officials, even though they got fired, but now they kind of rebel. They tell the public it's not their responsibility to cover up.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a second about Wuhan. I want to turn to Dave for a second. Dave, you've had some experience with the World Health Organization. You've had some experience with the leadership of the World Health Organization. One of the things that's concerned us is what Dr. Lin's talking about. There's clearly been some issue about the reporting of this, and did we lose 30 days or 60 days or 100 days in when this was being, that wasn't being reported and may have been covering up. But the World Health Organization, who besides the CDC people look to and the media looks to, they essentially are telling us every day that the Chinese Communist Party is doing such an amazing job in transparency, amazing job in accountability. It's almost like kowtowing. But you've had, I don't want to, smear these people. You've actually had direct working with the leadership and with World Health. Can people put confidence in these folks?
Steve, the greatest tragedy of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. If you think of a petri dish full of viruses, where the virus is doubling every minute, at 60 minutes, the petri dish is full. When is the petri dish half full? Many people with an imperfect understanding of math would answer 30 minutes, but the answer is actually 59 minutes. So most of the humans cannot comprehend the velocity and ferocity of this epidemic.
Brother, I've been looking for you I've been looking for you for 3 weeks. This is the whole point. This is the reason we started this show. This is when people said, hey, this is just a cold. I said, this is not a cold. Mm-hmm. There's something happening at a scale, and quantity has a quality all its own. I want you to go back over that and explain it. What about exponential, how you can't understand it, and why, and specifically in this situation, it's so important.
As we've seen, as you mentioned, Dr. Lung in Hong Kong, other brave doctors at the front line of this epidemic and other epidemics in the past, Dr. Lung came out with a statement that up to 60% of the world's population could be infected with this.
60 to 80%. If you read The Guardian, so Dr. Lung was the tip of the spear in SARS. He is a hero, like Dr. Liu gave his life. Dr. Gabriel Lung in Hong Kong University is a global hero. His interview is actually more shocking. When you actually read this is the mainstream media. They tamped it down even in the headlines. 60% of the United. He actually said the range could be, if I do the exponential math, 60 to 80% of the world's population could get it.
Yeah, sure. And then if you just run the infection rate or numbers, if you have 1 or 2% mortality from 2.5 billion people getting affected, I mean, you're talking tens of millions of people.
Okay, so
At
his
the risk
initial
of-
his initial model that he came out with, and jump in here, guys. This is the way we do it here. It is his initial model, Dr. Lung's, when they were reporting under 1,000. We started the show. In fact, we have the clips at the beginning we play. They had under 1,000 people, and I think they had 15 or 16 deaths on our first day of the show. Okay, Dr. Lung came out a couple of days later, said here it's actually 44,000, and it's doubling every 6.2 days. The two choices we have here is either a vaccine that Dr. Lin comes up with, which won't be for a couple of years at best, or social separation, which we're now going to do because we're going to quarantine. We're going to send the hammers down there and quarantine the city. But social separation it will run its course in April or May, and the president, talks to Xi, and it's something about, does it get warm? We don't know if there's a fact, but Dr. Lin, he doesn't put the end math on it. But Jack Maxey and the War Room guys do it when he does the first thing. It's 1.2 billion people, even on his math.
And that's by the end of April.
That's
first
the
week
end of
May.
April, May. Is that what we're talking about?
I think, yeah. I mean, this is straight out of like a Hollywood end of times movie. I mean, even Hollywood scriptwriters can conceive of something so terrifying. And my work in Ethiopia, where I've done farming projects, I saw firsthand the close link between food security and health security. In your past episodes, you've had experts on who have brought to light how dependent the American medical system and healthcare system is on drugs supplied from China. So we're not just talking about antibiotics, antivirals, antiretrovirals. We're talking about medicines for like blood thinners. Like most heart surgeries in America would just grind to a halt if heparin, a blood thinner, supply is cut off. So forget about the impact, the primary
But what is
first order impact from virus.
We're going to get to the thing in India as a strategic partner. Let's just put a pin in that for a second because I want to go two things before I go back to Dr. Lin. You're working with the World Health Organization. I just don't want to be me. This is once again Bannon's running around with his hair on fire, and he's got to get somebody. He's got to point the finger at somebody. So he's pointing the finger at the World Health Organization because they're part of the UN, and Bannon's wants to shut the UN down. Mm-hmm. That's not the point. The point here is that we have a pandemic that we called a month ago. That the World Health Organization in the first meeting says, it's kind of an issue, and maybe raised to emergency. It had to have 3 meetings with the Dr. Lungs of the world going, are you guys nuts? This is a pandemic. Talk to us about the World Health Organization, your interactions with them, and particularly, I think you spent time in Ethiopia.
Sure.
The leader there is from Ethiopia.
Yeah, absolutely. When I worked in Ethiopia, and I found there was a lot of discontent in the population because Dr. Tedros, before he was head of the World Health Organization, was the health minister of Ethiopia. And during his tenure there, he was accused of covering up local epidemics. And this culture of secrecy and lack of transparency has percolated upwards. And now we see this playing out at the leadership of the World Health Organization. So they're vastly understating the numbers, number one, and vastly understating the threats. And
Yes.
Steve,
Yeah.
let me
Yeah,
add,
yeah.
the final point is
Yeah.
what we've found in America and what we know instinctively as Americans is individuals with agency, bottom-up approaches, always are superior to top-down centralized approaches. An imperfect market is better than a perfect bureaucrat.
This gets to the lab that was there, and I don't want to get into the lab, so we'll do it with Tom Cotton tomorrow. But when you talk about human agency, just the way that the level 4 labs are run, that's why in the West everybody's kind of equal in these labs. You don't have a hierarchy of like the senior researcher because they're so dangerous about what's going on. But I want to go back to Wuhan. Just walk people through what for the American audience. And look, this show goes globally, but particularly for the American audience today. Give a sense of what's happening in Wuhan today when you got a biblical level plague, but you also have this effort of human beings. We saw yesterday 500 doctors and nurses now have the virus. Dr. Lee, this great hero, who was one of the original individuals that was the whistleblower. He was then accused by the police. He was thrown in the Hoosgow. He was condemned by the party apparatus. Then when he got out, the first thing he did was volunteer to go back to the hospital, understanding he was signing his death certificate. He was dead 10 days later. What is it like in Wuhan right now?
Yeah, you mentioned about Dr. Lee's very tragic death, and this is actually triggered a huge uproar on Chinese internet. So and especially for so many people in Wuhan, he's like ordinary people with a professional experience, and he just tell his truth. And then he got silenced, and then he died because of the infection. So many people are really upset about his death because when he exposed that he know there are cluster outbreak. They were using SARS testing kits. So it was clear it was SARS. And because it was SARS, it's supposed to report to the central committees. It's not like any local government can hide it. Right? So it's actually decision from the central government. And also, because it's SARS, they should report it to WHO. Because it will automatically be a public health emergency of international concern. So that's why it's so ridiculous for the WHO. They delayed 2-3 times to reject to declare it as a public health emergency of international concern. And now it's definitely already growing to a pandemic situation. So WHO's action is definitely too slow. And just to add to the observation about the corruption in the WHO, the former director, Margaret Chan, she's the one actually covered up the SARS outbreak in Hong Kong in 2003. And she got elected as a Secretary General for WHO because of the CCP's support.
I want to go back to the whole SARS reporting. The whistleblowers initially, those 8 doctors who had all gone to medical school with each other, and this is Dr. Lee and his cohorts, sometime around the Christmas holidays, started talking to each other on WeChat. And the issue they brought up is they thought they had a SARS-like virus in Wuhan because they were seeing patients. You're saying because of the requirements from SARS, that was already being reported as SARS or some sort of SARS. So regardless of the coronavirus, they already had a reporting mechanism that they had to show this because of the SARS debacle back in 2003 that had to be reported to CCP. And there's a requirement to go and report this to WHO right away.
Yes, because it's such a high-level contagious disease, it automatically will become a public health emergency of international concern.
So if WHO had actually gotten the reports that was SARS, they would have had to have called an emergency to know that SARS had come back in central China immediately. We now know that WHO, as late as the lunar holiday around the 18th, were not saying it was an emergency, correct?
Yes, that's what they did. They just delayed it for months, actually.
What do you think? You're saying the delay was at the party level and then up to the senior levels of the CCP?
Definitely at the top level, because these kind of decisions, nobody at local level can have the dare to withhold the information, to conceal the information.
You're a specialist in actually the making of vaccines. You're a virus hunter, but vaccines. As you see this today, and as you've analyzed, there's been all kind of things. The IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology, which is like the MIT of India. There've been other people have come out and said these reports and they've been downplayed or at least dismissed. And our guy, Dr. Hatfield, says he thinks it's a natural virus. But as you see it today, when would you think that a vaccine would be out there that would actually confront and cure the coronavirus?
I actually think to cure is very, very difficult. It's like a dream. But to contain the situation, maybe based on current NIH or US NIAID's methods, probably within 3 months you can have a testing vaccine. So they will be pushing it pretty hard for initial human trials, very small scales. Yeah, so there will be about 3 months period.
How would they get to where have they been able to isolate the vaccine on the cruise ship in Japan and Yokohama? Where are they, in Singapore? Where are they actually getting this? Where do you think they're doing the most work or the best work right now on the vaccine?
So right now for those cruise ship, it's actually a very good environment to testing how fast the virus transmit in a closed environment. But I don't know about the medical scientists support in that area. So whether they can quickly isolate the infectious clone from the patient's
Why
body.
do you say through a potential 3 months? What is the logic that gets me to a 3 months? Because you're making me feel a lot better.
Because right now, once you have the full genome sequence, you can design different.
Do we have the full genome sequence right now?
Yes, yes. The Chinese scientists published first, and then so many other countries also got the full genome sequence. And then Australia scientists announced they isolated the infectious clone.
In that genome sequence that's come out, we've only got a minute. We'll come back to this afterwards. Do you believe it naturally occurred somewhere? This is not. These people say this came out of the level 4. That's a weapons lab potentially. That it came out of there. Our Dr. Hatfield doesn't believe. He thinks it's natural. You think it's natural given the genome sequence?
The sequence has some peculiar characteristic. Doesn't look like so natural. Even, for example, the envelope protein for this coronavirus from Wuhan is like 100% identical with.
Okay, let's
sorry.
no, it's fine. We're going to jump for a commercial break.
Okay.
So, no, but what I want to leave the audience hanging. We're going to come back with this with Dr. Lin, Dave Ramaswamy, Jack Maxey on War Room Pandemic. We're going to return in a moment with on episode 16 on all the platforms. You can go to pandemic.warroom.org. Stephen K. Bannon, live from Capitol Hill, the nation's capital. We'll be back in one moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back live from our nation's capital. It's War Room Pandemic. Stephen K. Bannon. The virus is a demon, and the demon cannot be allowed to hide. That comes from the president of China, or the last emperor, I should call him, last Emperor Xi. He knows how bad it is. Now he's walking around with a mask, with an N95 around Beijing, of which they got 35 million people in lockdown. We're going to get to all of that. It's episode 16. We're here with Dave Ramaswamy from the Indus Latin Ventures. He's an agricultural specialist throughout the world. We're going to talk in this section about India. President Trump's going over there about potential partnerships and how India could be a real partner with the United States in helping put down this pandemic, this global plague that's upon us. Also, Dr. Sashun Lin, formerly from the U.S. Army, and one of the great young doctors in this country. They're a virus hunter and knows how about vaccines. I want to go back to the virus. We left everybody hanging. We've had Dr. Hatfield. There's so much going on in this. I want you to walk through in just some basic logic about what this virus looks like in its genome structure. You're saying, hey, is it natural? Is it not natural? Walk us through that.
Okay. So virus express several important proteins. So I just mentioned about two proteins that are very important. One is the envelope protein, one is the spike protein. So envelope protein is very important for virus assembly, virus budding, and virus virulence, like how pathogenic it can be, right? So
virulence meaning how deadly. Is my rate 2% or is it MERS, I think, was 50%? Is it going to kill 2% of the people that get it, or is it going to kill 50% of the people that get it?
Yeah, because these small protein
That's an important number for you folks out there.
Mm-hmm. It interact with so many cellular factors. So when the virus jump from one host to another one, from bat to another animal, or to animal from animal to human, it's very rare to these proteins don't change. So right now, the sequence from the Wuhan novel coronavirus, you can see the envelope protein is 100% identical with one of the SARS-like bad coronavirus. So this is really odd.
What do you mean really odd?
Because it's almost impossible to have these virus.
How almost impossible is it? As a professional, if you were sitting around in your lab with 10 of your colleagues and you were going through this and walking through this, what would the consensus be among the top guys at the U.S. Army Institute, who are the pros from Dover?
We'll probably say like 1 in a billion. It's
1 in a billion means that it didn't happen, right?
It didn't happen. I mean, it's impossible to have these whole protein conserved. There may be silent mutations, but it's hard to see that it's completely conserved.
Okay, but this I got the Washington Post. Bill Gertz and some other guys go over some early reporting, right? And maybe it was on some social media, whatever. And the Washington Post comes out the next day with its big story that this is all fringe theory from a bunch of cranks, etc. But it gets down. The research had not been done on this virus yet because we really didn't have the structure of it from the Chinese. You're saying today, because we're going to have Senator Cotton on tomorrow. This is one of his things. Do you think that this thing is a natural evolution of some virus?
I really suspicious on that one, but I don't have any direct evidence. And just even another evidence is on the S protein, the spike protein. As spike protein binding to human receptor ACE2, and you have 5 important amino acid sites that bind to the ACE2. And you can see these newly identified Wuhan coronavirus have mutation at 4 of the 5 sites, but they actually still keep the confirmation to bind to the human receptor. That's also a rare event, very rare event.
What do you mean very rare?
So you
You just gave me 1 to a billion, which means it didn't happen.
This one I don't know.
How very rare is this?
This one I don't know. I don't
But
have
if
any
you okay,
statistics.
let me make it easier. If you were around the lab, the U.S. Army lab, with your colleagues, what would be the general consensus of how you guys would even think of a vaccine, given that you don't think that this is totally natural?
So we think it's likely there are some reverse genetic technology behind it to use for vaccine study, because in the past few years, actually in this front, there's huge progress to using reverse genetics to change different part of the virus gene in order to understand vaccine designs. So the logic behind it was that if I can do some gain of function study on the virus important genes, then we can better understand maybe better design a vaccine that can provide better protection. So when the outbreak occur naturally, because my vaccine can protect even more deadly virus, so my vaccine should be protected even better for the general and the natural happen outbreaks.
Let me the swine. I'm gonna come back to you, Dave, here in a second. In the swine flu that killed, one of the reasons that the Chinese had to do the phase 1 trade deal on the purchases, half of the swine population in China was slaughtered, I think, in the August-September timeframe, right?
Yeah.
It led the doctor at the Bloomberg Center of Johns Hopkins to actually do the tabletop study, and he picked coronavirus, where he projected out, coming out of Brazil with less population density, that would kill 65 million people, correct?
Yeah, I saw that data.
Which has shocked everybody. Is there any correlation between what happened with the swine flu, and I realize this is an avian flu, not a swine flu, was there any correlation between how virulent that was and how virulent or how quickly the transmission of this has gone?
I think it's 2 different viruses, so it will be 2 different characteristics. So I think I haven't seen any study to do recombination study to combine different pieces of avian
How
flu
did that go?
versus
How did that go through?
coronavirus.
How did that go through the hog population in China so quickly? I mean, this was a devastating to the Chinese economy and the Chinese people. The swine flu that they had in the summer and early fall was devastating. It's the reason that Johns Hopkins decided to do a tabletop study, because it was so brutal.
Regarding about the swine flu, I think one of the problems is also related to government didn't tell people about this source of the infection, maybe coming from Russia, when they purchased so much pork from Russia, and actually the swine flu routed from Africa and then go to Europe and then now end up in China when it was largely imported in large quantity, and then so many people got infected.
So this is the reason. This is the point I get back to you. That health security. That now that you have this globalization, you have the inextricably linked part of globalization, just-in-time inventory. Your point that food security becomes health security. So you have this massive swine flu that devastates China. We don't even know where it came from. People think it may come from Africa up to Europe to Russia. Then it kills half the hog population. Here you have corona, which we don't know is natural enough. Walk back. The transmission rates here that are so huge, and we have the Imperial College now say maybe doubles every 5 days. Dr. Loon's still saying every 6.2 to 6.5 days. How do people at home get their hands around the scale of this?
One way to think of it, another analogy is, I will draw an analogy to terrorism. What we have with the Wuhan or coronavirus outbreak is an explosion of biological terrorism. And these really infected patients are biological suicide bombers. So this is the threat and risk of an exponential function. So, lazy journalists have seen the number of deaths announced so far and said, oh, more Americans die from bathtub accidents than the coronavirus, which is intellectually lazy, because if one person falls and dies in a bathtub, they're the only person who dies. While with a virus, and you have these super spreaders in China, you have cases of 1 or 2 people going into a hospital and infecting hundreds of people. So, and including healthcare workers and nurses. So that's the risk. So Chinese hospitals, their ICUs are overloaded with patients who went in for, say, diabetes or kidney disease, and now they have corona, which takes them out.
Dr. Lee died. He's an ophthalmologist. He saw a patient that was asymptomatic. And in fact, that heart-rendering last interview he gives with the New York Times, he says, I got careless. I got careless, and she was asymptomatic. And that's how I got it, and that's how he died.
Yes.
Because the asymptomatic feature of this is so scary, because now we're thinking some people could be asymptomatic, they don't know, up to 14 days.
In fact, this guy from England, just to put in the super spreader, goes to Singapore. He has no symptoms, and he gets it on the street in Singapore. They don't know the source that he got it from. Flies to France to go skiing with his friends. 11 people who were in the chalet with him are now infected. He infected another person in France, and he infected someone in Spain.
He went to Spain after that to another vacation. Let's go. I want to pivot now to India for a second, because people don't realize how India could be the potential solution, or working with the United States in this. Walk us through how President Trump's going there. Is obviously a tremendous admirer of President Modi. The Howdy Modi effort that and I knew the guys that put this on was just amazing, and it was one of the best events I think President Trump has been, and I know he was pleasantly shocked about the scale of it and really the outreach of the Hindu Americans that were there, and this is probably one of the best events he's ever had. He's going over to see Modi in the middle of this. If you were there and advising President Trump and Modi, what would you think, what's the best solution that could come out here to help the world?
It's very apropos and admirable that President Trump has decided to visit India at this critical juncture when he has lots of other threats and challenges on his agenda. While President Trump's message to President Xi has been tear down the firewall, President Trump's message to Prime Minister Modi should be, let's build a biowall. And what do I mean by that? It's that the food and health systems of the world are tightly linked. Some of your experts have mentioned how China critically controls the drug supply and medical equipment supply of America. What a lot of people also don't know is China controls the world's agrochemical supply. So any extended factory shutdown in China can have negative multiplier effects on food production in the world. As the Arab Spring has taught us, if there is food inflation, and you see it coming down the pike in China, as farmers can't go to their fields, crops are rotting in warehouses, stuff is rotting at ports, you'll have huge increases in fruit prices, vegetable prices, and other inflation in essential commodities. So the message is now, when Prime Minister or President Trump goes to India, is let's work with a partner who shares America's values. And that's like dynamism, democracy, and diversity.
Let me just ask you a question before we get into that. Why does the mainstream media, it's the largest democracy in the world. President Modi just ran, and the New York Times and the Washington Post are on this guy. We had, on the Breitbart radio, we had the Modi guys come on, I think in 13 and 14, and saying he was the next, before Trump came on the scene, he was India's Reagan. Now he's Trump before Trump. Why do they continue to forget that you're the largest democracy in the world? And the election you had last spring was absolutely unbelievable. I forget, was it 800 million people voted? It took a month. It took a month to count them. And no offense, we should have the Indians come over here to Iowa and help us sort out. Help us sort out how to sort it. Because at the end of the day, all the votes are counted, right?
Yeah.
And no, you don't see any. The guys are moaning about who won and how they won and stuff like that. I just paid another fine. But talk about what brings us together is the fact that we may be the oldest, republic right now, but you're the world's biggest and most vibrant and robust democracy.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Modi was elected or re-elected with a bigger mandate than his first term in 2014. 600 million people voted for him. The largest electoral victory in world history. Prime Minister Modi.
2x the population of the United States.
Yeah, and so Prime Minister Modi, you can think of him as the LeBron James and Tom Brady of democracy. He doesn't need lectures of democracy from people who've not won a school board election. And as the recent episode or the primaries in Iowa has showed, the Democratic Party shadow banned its own candidates. And Bernie was the loser. And so when we can't fix our democratic problems at home, like some of these poobahs and elites, they have no business lecturing a country where you have 70% voter turnout. And so, once again, in this upcoming visit by President Trump to India, what needs to be emphasized is the shared values between our two great countries. There's a great pool of entrepreneurship which exists in India. Lots of family-owned firms innovating in sectors like pharma, IT, AI. And so, for example, Indian pharma companies have invested over $5 billion in America, putting manufacturing plants in red states, blue states, but mostly in the red states. And so this has created over 5,000 jobs. In a couple of years ago, the stats show that they have saved American taxpayers over $80 billion in 1 year by producing generic drugs. Back to this episode, the Wuhan outbreak, and if you look at the treatment modalities of some of the patients who have recovered, Chinese doctors, Thai doctors have used a drug cocktail. So they've used anti-flu drugs, antiviral drugs, but also antiretroviral drugs. And antiretrovirals, as you know, has been used to treat HIV. One of the leading American companies in the space is this company Gilead Sciences,
Yes.
based outside San Francisco. And one of Gilead's great contributions to public health, working with Indian pharma partners, is for Hep C, against Hep C. So they have licensed the Hep C drug to Indian pharma partners who brought down the cost of these drugs by over 90%. And now it's being exported to 190 countries. So Hep C used to be a death sentence in the past, and now it's not. Same with HIV. A peasant in Africa, thanks to Indian pharma companies' combination of high quality innovation at low costs, they are living 20 to 30 years after their diagnosis because the annual treatment for an antiretroviral was brought down from $10,000 or $15,000 a year to $50 a year. So that's the kind of innovation that President Trump needs to leverage during his meetings with Prime Minister Modi.
I got to go back to Dr. Lin in a second, but I want to finish up with this. Given that President Trump is going at an inflection point really in modern world history because we had this massive pandemic, this biological Chernobyl, what do you think is the best outcome you would recommend? What's the best outcome could happen with this meeting between President Trump and Modi, specifically towards this pandemic?
Sure. They've already announced high-profile defense deals where India's agreed to buy helicopters and other advanced defense systems from America, which helps bridge the trade deficit. So that's a very welcome development. But Steve, viruses don't respect bullets or borders. And so we have to take our defense cooperation to the next level into biodefense. And so biodefense includes food, health, and all the ecosystems around it to prevent the spread of this pandemic. And recently we had the episode of, flights still emanating from China long after the risk of the Wuhan virus was known. And it took not a centralized top-down approach, but a bottom-up approach where you had pilots and flight attendants from Delta and American Airlines protesting that they would not fly to China. And this happened with airlines around the world. And people lazily accused, once again, then the media of, this is an example of racism or xenophobia, which is comically absurd because China, within its own borders, had implemented distancing and military quarantine. So this is, once again, it's a outbreak of biological terror, and we need strategic partners like India working with the US and other allies like Japan to contain it.
Okay, we're gonna next week. Hopefully, we're gonna have a special before President Trump comes. We're gonna have you and your colleagues in here because this is incredibly important. Dr. Lin, before the show runs out, that was great, Dave. Before the show runs out, I want to talk about the firewall. On Fox the other night, I said 3 things should happen. And I hope number 1, the firewall has to come down immediately, so we have pure communication between the Chinese people and the West.
Yes.
In reverse. There's no need. American companies that are helping to build that and helping to support it's outrageous, and they ought to be outed. Number 2, CDC and WHO, the top virus hunters should be allowed. No more of the CCP having the decision to do this or not. They have to let these in. And number 3, if there's a volunteer army, which I think there will be, of doctors and nurses, because obviously the public health service is starting to collapse in Wuhan and central China. Going to the firewall. How important is it? Because I know that you have many colleagues in China itself. How important is it for the Chinese people now for that firewall to come down?
I think it's a matter related to people's life or death. So it's so important, and it's also a national defense strategy for United States to help many of these organizations to further develop or enhance their technology to break through Chinese firewall. Because this firewall is actually cutting down people's connection to the whole world, to the reality of what is happening, to the whole world and what's happening inside China.
But won't that allow the CCP just to dig their heels in and say, "Hey, this is the I see the United States has changed this now to the Indo-Pacific sphere. This is Japan, India, the United States trying to contain us, trying to surround us, and they're using this as an opportunity." How do you get it out of that national security and go back and say, hey, no, you've got literally hundreds of millions of people that have to be able to communicate? One of the things going around social media this morning is where they're nailing in folks into their apartments, right? And that may be part of this draconian. We had the complex systems guy on here a couple weeks ago. He says if you do not take some adequate measures down low, you have to go to draconian measures later. How can you make an argument that just for people's well-being, this life or death, the firewall has to come down?
Because when people know the true situation in China, they themselves can organize. They themselves can find different way to support themselves. So right now, Chinese government's draconian measures basically take out all the options for people to support themselves. So everything people have to rely on the governments. They lock you in your room with chain, even in the seal the keyholes. All these things measures to lock you down. So there's no way Chinese people can support themselves. So now they can. Especially after they shut down some of the internet in the cities, so people can only rely on the government source to get information and keep brainwashing them.
Does the CCP care if they lose 30 or 40 million Chinese in this?
No, it doesn't matter to them. If you look at the so-called 3 years farming from 1959 to 1961,
the Great Famine,
the Great Famines, so more than 30 million people die. To Chinese Communist Party, they're just one digital number. Right, and to them, more important is to maintain their own power. So that's why even now, when you look at President Xi Jinping's directive regarding about this coronavirus, so he has 7 directives, and the last one is actually to improve medical treatment for this patient.
Yeah, number 7.
Yeah, and then number 7, and then number 6 is enhance propaganda.
Yeah.
To enhance the propaganda to show people the communist cadre member doing very well to support people.
We've got to bounce. Dr. Sashu Lin. Dave, how do people, you have a Twitter handle, how do people get to you? Website? No? You're brilliant.
Hi.
You guys are both, it's been an amazing show. Okay, episode 16 of War and Pandemic. We're going to be back tomorrow. Senator Tom Cotton is going to be in the war room, and we're going to discuss the Wuhan pandemic tomorrow, 10 o'clock.